Hey guys, so welcome to Unit 8, and in this unit the topic is decision making, and it's actually focused more on ethical decision making, right? I will talk about I'm just going to mention some of the most common, most famous decision making frameworks that are out there. But I'll just mention some of those because the goal here is to address the ethical decision-making framework. And although ideally you want to use as ethical decision-making frameworks whenever you can, there are situations where people will just consider strategies, approaches that you can leverage in order to make the right decision. Now, the difference between ethical decision making and simply decision making is that the simple decision making means, well, you have a goal and you want to make a decision or the best decision in order to achieve that goal. It doesn't matter. You're not so focused on the ethical implications of it. Okay. And again, ideally, you want to always consider the ethical issues associated with your decisions. So that's why we're focusing on ethical decision making. Okay. So just again, briefly, I have here it is, a few decision making frameworks. I would say that probably and again, it depends on the scenario, but probably the rapid and the SWOT analysis frameworks, those are the most common frameworks that are out there, especially for people in engineering. The Pareto analysis is also very much used. The Pareto analysis is that one, you probably heard of it. Basically, it highlights what strategies you can use in order to put 80% of effort, 20% of effort to achieve 80% success, or to use, let's say, 20% of our time to achieve 80% of the expected result. So basically, it's a theory that will help you understand how you can do less to achieve more. So basically the idea is, well, you do not need to complete 100% of what you're supposed to complete. You only need to complete 80%. And if you use, let's say, 20% of your effort or your time, you can actually work in theoretically, in 5 different projects, for example. So 20%, 5 different projects. So you put 100% of our time, but you are now working on 5 different projects, achieving 80% success in each of those 5 projects, right? Now, obviously, if you observe this idea, you can see that the Pareto analysis is quite far, most of the times, right? It's quite far from a ethical decision-making framework, because what is important here is how you can achieve more, right? Even without considering the ethical implications of it. Again, you're only focused on doing a bunch of stuff at the same time, delivering let's say, a result that is good, but not the best one. Not you won't provide the service that you could fully provide, right? The rapid framework is another framework that is focused more on how you can make decisions fast to achieve a rapid result. Okay. And the SWOT framework is another one that is very, very famous. Now, basically, all these decision-making frameworks, they have the same base, okay? They have the same structure, underlying structure, which is, well, you have to identify your problem. Once you identify the problem, you want to make a list of the possible solutions. out of those solutions, you want to identify the pros and cons of each of those solutions so that you filter it down to maybe one or two possible solutions, and then you take action. Then you apply that solution that you selected or those solutions that you selected. At the same time, this is a cyclic framework or a cyclic project, which means that, well, you apply it, that does not mean that you're done. Okay, you have to constantly revisit your decisions because the scenario might change, the time might change. Maybe that is not the decision that you made is not the best decision anymore, given that some changes have occurred. Okay, so basically that's what it's about. That's what decision-making frameworks are about. But like I said, we are more concerned about the ethical decision-making frameworks. Okay, so I brought an article here, okay, from Penn State University, and you have a question here, right? What would it help if there were a stepwise method you could use to analyze these ethical decisions? Okay, so that's what a framework is. Okay, framework is nothing more than a sort of a formula, or at least a reference model that you can follow in order to achieve something. So, when considering an ethical issue, it is advised that you follow a stepwise approach in your decision-making process. Recognize there is an issue, identify the problem and who's involved, consider the relevant facts, laws, and principles, analyze and determine possible course of action, and implement the solution. Observe that compared to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, right? All decision-making frameworks, they are based on one underlying structure, which is recognize there is an issue, identifying the problem, consider the relevant facts, analyze and determine possible course of action, and implement the solution. Observe that the difference here when it comes to ethical problem solving frameworks, we're not only considering relevant facts, but we're considering laws and principles, okay? And that's what makes it different. So a simple decision-making tool is detailed below. In this example, you're required to ask yourself the following questions. What should we do? Or what are the good or right options in this context, right? Why should we do it? Exploring the values and reasons that support each option. How should we do it? What plans of actions are best aligns with these values and reasons? And who should use it? Who is responsible for making the final decision and enact and communicating it? So observe that again, you have the same idea, right? What should we do? Why should we do it? How should we do it? Who should do it in order to take action? Now, observe that, for example, when it comes to what should we do, what options are good or right in this context? And obviously, there is a difference between good and right. Good means what is a good alternative to achieve that result. It's different from the right alternative or the right action, the right solution, compared to the ethical issues, right? Such as compliance, such as regulations, considering regulations, right? Why should we do it? Exploring the values and reasons that support each option. Again, exploring the reasons is one thing. Exploring the values and reasons. You're not only considering the reasons why you should do it, but you should also explore the values that justify, that are attached to the reasons. How should we do it? What plans of actions best aligns with these reasons is one thing. And what plan of actions best aligns with these values and reasons, that's another thing. So An ethical dilemma describes a conflict between two morally correct course of action. And this summarizes everything that I've mentioned so far, right? There is a conflict between values or principles, okay? The dilemma is that you would be doing something right and wrong at the same time, and by taking one right course, you negate the other right course, okay? So like I said, one thing is the best solution, or picking the best solution. Now, the best solution, it does not necessarily mean that it is the right solutions when you're considering values, okay? That's why we have the issues concept. So the issues concept from the McMaster University is an example of a ethical decision-making framework. It is applicable at personal, professional, and organizational levels, both between and within groups. Values permeate everything we do, and sometimes these values come into conflict. When they do it, it is imperative to recognize that one is experiencing an ethical dilemma, okay? Ethical conflicts are usually best resolved through direct engagement with the parties involved, okay? Often there will not be an answer that pleases everyone, and so it is our responsibility to ensure that our processes for decision making are fair and legitimate, okay? Again, the best decision when it comes to the focus on a result will most likely please everybody, right? Not necessarily, but most likely, because if the expected result is well defined, or if the goal is well defined, if we're not considering the ethical implications, as long as you achieve that goal, it's going to please everybody, right? Differently from ethical decisions. Ethical decisions might not please everybody. So this tool is designed to help you think through difficult decisions when ethics is a factor and develop justifiable reasons for your choices in a rigorous, transparent, and fair manner. This process is captured in the acronym ISSUES. So ISSUES stands for Identify Issue and Decision-Making Process, Study the Facts, Select Reasonable Options, and here comes the differences. Understand values and duties so that you can evaluate and justify options. So once again, considering values is what matters when you are using an ethical decision-making framework, okay? It may be useful to imagine that rigorous ethical decision-making is like building a house. When we encounter ethical dilemmas, our first instinct may be to find a quick fix. However, our desire for resolution may cause us to misidentify the key issues or overlook important facts, values, or the opinions of other stakeholders. Ethical decision-making starts with a strong foundation based on a clear understanding of the nature of the problem and all relevant facts and perspectives before deciding on options, weighing those options, and making decisions. Okay? So that's why the issues framework is so important, right? Obviously, as I mentioned already, you want to identify the ethical issues in decision-making process. You want to study the facts. You want to select reasonable options, understand values and duties. This is what matters the most, okay? So that you can evaluate and justify the options to sustain and review the plan, okay? Now, just another thing that you might consider when it comes to a framework for ethical decision making, and this is another article that I have here, I brought for you guys from Santa Clara University. When it comes to ethical decision making, obviously, we need to understand what ethics is. And it is a very subjective definition, right? Ethics is not the same as feelings. Ethics is not the same as religion. Ethics is not the same thing as following the law. Ethics is not the same as following culturally accepted norms. Ethics is not science, but it might be all of these combined. And that's why it is so abstract and so complex, right? So, in order to help you with the issues framework, for example, right, you have to have a better understanding of what ethics is. And that's what this Santa Clara University framework provides to you, okay? Understanding ethical issues. So according to this framework, when it comes to ethics, there are 6 different ways that you can analyze a specific situation, okay? Or identify ethical issues in a specific scenario. So you will analyze the ethical issues considering what they call the ethical lenses, okay? So, for example, you may consider the rights lens. The rights lens means, well, we're more focused on what is actually right and wrong as far as the legality, the legal issues of what you're about to do. Now, combined with that, you have the justice lens. Justice is the idea that each person should be given their due, and what people are due is often interpreted as fair or equal treatment. Equal treatment implies that people should be treated as equals according to some defensible standards such as merit or need. So observe that although this says justice, the justice lens is not necessarily justice as in law, okay? It means being just to others. You also have the utilitarian lens, the common good lens, the virtue lens, which is a more, let's say, cultural lens, the care ethics lens, and then you have here a description of how you might use the lens. So each of the lenses introduced above helps us determine what standards of behavior and character traits can be considered right and good. There are still problems to be solved, however. The first problem is that we may not agree on the content of some of the specific lenses. For example, we may not all agree on the same set of human and civil rights. It depends on your country. It depends on your culture. It depends on your upbringing. There are so many different factors that will impact on, for example, this type of lens. We may not agree on what constitutes the common good. We may not agree on what is good and what is harm. The second problem is that different lenses may lead to different answers to the question, what is ethical? Nonetheless, each one gives us important insights in the process of deciding what is ethical in a particular circumstance, right? So, the value of these lenses here is you need to understand that in order to make ethical decisions, there is no specific right or wrong, okay? You may think according to your culture, according to your upbringing, according to laws, according to regulations, compliance regulations. You may think that, well, it's only ethical to do this, right? And again, other people that are involved may not see the same way. So what that means is, differently from the traditional decision-making frameworks that are much more focused on executing to achieve a goal, and again, it does not really matter who is involved in that process, as long as the goal is achieved. When it comes to ethical decision making, it's completely the opposite. Okay? In order to perform ethical decisions, in order to make ethical decisions, you have to discuss, you have to talk to others, you have to consider all the opinions, all and really consider the background of all of those people that are involved. So brainstorming is really important. Meetings, obviously, very important. But what matters is this is not going to be an individual decision. This is going to be a group decision, and a lot of communication is required in this process. So keep in mind that when it comes to decision making, you're considering a scenario. Ethical decision making, it's completely different. Obviously, if you're talking about an academic or professional environment, it will depend on the organization's policy or how they conduct these kind of decisions, right? But if you are to make ethical decisions, you must consider these differences. Okay? Thank you very much.